Hello everyone. This is the story of a boy who built a nuclear reactor using simple household items. A boy who outsmarted every government agency in the United States and proved everyone wrong who believed that one person could never build a nuclear bomb alone. Because this kid almost did. And when he did it, he was only 17 years old. But the foundation of this scientific mind was laid much earlier, in his childhood. Let's go back to the beginning. David Hahn was born in 1976. When he was 6 years old, his parents got divorced. But then came the first event that changed his life forever. His grandfather gifted him a book, the Golden Book of Chemistry Experiments. After reading it, David became completely obsessed with chemistry. He even set up a small laboratory at his father's house. And this wasn't some toy lab for fun experiments. It had real beakers, Bunsen burners, test tubes, and actual chemicals. Chemicals that a child was never supposed to get. So how did David get them? Well, that's where things start to get interesting. David started spending all his pocket money buying chemistry books and study materials. He was fascinated by chemical reactions and wanted to test everything himself. But his experiments were far from safe. At just 12 years old, David created nitroglycerin, the same explosive used in dynamite. Yes, the signs of a big explosion in his life had already begun. Back then, in the 1960s and 70s, books about experiments didn't focus much on safety. There were no strict laws about it either. So you could literally buy books that explained how to make bombs, weapons, and dangerous chemicals. Later, the government banned such books, and the Golden Book of Chemistry Experiments was one of them. But for kids like David, it was already too late. Explosions, fires, burnt carpets, smoke-filled rooms. These became a daily routine in David's house. Tired of this chaos, his parents told him to move his lab somewhere else. That was the second event that changed everything, because it gave David complete freedom. He moved his lab to the basement, where he had more space and no restrictions. One day, while working with red phosphorus, an explosion shook not just his house, but also the neighbors' houses. Windows shattered, furniture toppled, and David was badly injured. He was rushed to the hospital. After this, he was banned from doing experiments at home. But David wasn't the kind of kid who gave up easily. He set up a new, full-scale lab inside a storage room at his mother's house. And to keep him disciplined, his father enrolled him in the Boy Scouts. In Scouting, members earned badges for achievements, just like in the Army. And guess what? David earned the Atomic Energy Merit Badge. This badge filled him with a dangerous confidence. He now believed he was an expert in atomic energy. And soon he made up his mind to build a real nuclear reactor. That was the third major turning point in his life. Now, you might be wondering, sometimes I say nuclear reactor, sometimes nuclear bomb. But here's the truth. An uncontrolled nuclear reactor is basically a nuclear bomb. David faced two major problems. None of the library books had a step-by-step guide to build a reactor. He needed radioactive fuel. But who would give that to a 17-year-old kid? For any adult, this would have been an impossible mission. But David was no ordinary kid. Since David had earned that Atomic Energy Badge, his handbook contained contact details of every government agency in America related to atomic energy. So he wrote letters to all of them, pretending to be a science professor. He said he was doing research for his students and needed specific information. Surprisingly, no one verified his identity, and soon he started receiving confidential scientific data, information that should never have reached a teenager. With this, David now knew how to build a nuclear device, but he still needed radioactive material. So David made a list of everyday household items that contained radioactive substances. For example, he learned that americium, a radioactive element, is found inside smoke detectors. So he bought dozens of them. He even called a smoke detector company pretending to be a teacher and asked where the Americium was located so he could show it to his students. The company told him, and using that, he extracted Americium and built his first neutron gun. But that wasn't enough. He also needed thorium, and his scouting handbook mentioned that camping lantern mantles contained thorium. So he bought lots of them, extracted the thorium, and purified it, 900 times more than its natural state. Now, David had both a neutron gun and radioactive fuel. He aimed his neutron gun at the thorium, but nothing happened. No chain reaction. His scientist friends told him that his gun wasn't powerful enough, and he needed a radium-based neutron gun. Radium, they said, could be found in old clocks and traffic signs. So he went to an antique store with his Geiger counter and found an old clock that made the counter go crazy. He bought it, opened it at home, and discovered a full bottle of radium paint inside. Using that, he built a more powerful neutron gun. At this point, at just 17 years old, David Hahn knew how to make a nuclear bomb and how to collect the materials for it. He wasn't building a typical reactor. He was building a breeder reactor, a reactor that not only uses nuclear fuel, but also produces new fuel in the process, releasing even more energy. David started his reactor, and it worked. But soon, the radiation levels began to rise, so high that it could be detected from meters away. His homemade reactor had reached a subcritical stage, one step away from a nuclear explosion. Terrified, David dismantled the reactor and hid the parts inside the trunk of his car. But a neighbor saw him and thought he was a thief and called the police. When police arrived and opened the trunk, they found strange metallic and chemical equipment. They called the bomb squad. When the bomb squad detected radiation, everyone was shocked. How could a 17-year-old boy possibly build a nuclear device? Later, investigations revealed that David's experiment could have affected up to 40,000 people if it had gone wrong. David was arrested, but later released when the court ruled he had no criminal intent. He then joined the US Navy and even worked on a nuclear submarine. But due to his mental health issues, he was eventually discharged. Over the years, government agencies kept visiting him to ensure he wasn't rebuilding another reactor. Sadly, David fell into depression and drug addiction. He later died under tragic circumstances. It's hard to imagine what David could have achieved if he had proper guidance and access to the right tools. His story teaches us that to achieve something extraordinary, you need just one thing: a burning desire.